Well, welcome to the Dylan Thomas Birthplace. We have a varied evening of poetry tonight from both sides of the Atlantic. Rhys has come a short distance, Chad has come 3,000 odd miles for a variety of different places, and I will leave you to them. We'll have one little session, then we'll have a break, you can have a drink or have a little around the house, and then we'll have a second section, perhaps end up with some questions and answers at the end. So if I first of all can introduce you to Rhys, who will tell you all about himself.
Thanks, Jeff. My name is Rhys Owain Williams. I've just recently published my first collection of poetry, That Lone Ship, with Parthian Books. The book's been out now in my hands for about 2 months, but actually the official publication date was the beginning of this week, so it's the first event after official publication. There's a good few number of Swansea poems in here, or poems with a Swansea flavour. So I thought I'd begin with one of those. It's called The Road Must Eventually Lead to the Whole World. We told friends we'd drive the whole coast of Britain, but we only got as far as Penzance. As we left Swansea on that lukewarm morning, I had a feeling we wouldn't make it past Cornwall. Petrol prices had skyrocketed that year. When we reached Mounts Bay, we sat in the car in a car park, unwilling to pay and display. It was Saturday, and day-tripping tourists had taken over the town. We both agreed it was time to head home, back to part-time jobs, our comfortable beds. 3 days on the road and our hometown was calling us, its high, clear song carried on the haze. Bring your ship to rest, so that you may hear our voices. That night, we pitched on a hill on Devon's north coast, trying to cook tinfoil-wrapped sausages under the hood of my car. Across the Severn Sea, I was sure I could see Mumble's lighthouse, shining a light through the unsighted night. This isn't necessarily about Swansea, but it's about one of the characters of Swansea, but I thought I'd read it tonight, given that we're in Dylan Thomas's house and he was quite fond of character writing. This is called The Man at the Bus Stop. We collect. Sheltered by 2/3 of a box, gathered in hope of the 842. He is there without fail, his eyes rubber-stalking the bend, muttering half questions we pretend not to hear. There's something wrong with him, they say, in a pensioner's whisper. He's not all there. At the first sliver of painted steel, his arms fly up. I'm here, I'm here. Louder than the halt of route-weary wheels, I'm here. It is night now. The buses have stopped. I pause too long in the room where our toothbrushes touch. Through the open window, the silent world leans. And I say, nothing. This next poem is inspired by a village in Pembrokeshire, which in between October 2015 and January 2016, it rained for 85 consecutive days. And obviously we're quite used to it raining in Wales, but that length of time is a little bit unusual. So the villagers were a little bit fed up by this point, until they realised that they might have a chance of beating the British record set for consecutive days of rain, which was 89 days, set on the Scottish island of Islay in 1923. So they didn't quite make it. They only made it to 85. But this poem is inspired by that. It's called Eggless Uru. The cracked ribs of umbrellas pierce sopping black bags. For 3 months it has rained. Clogged drains making rivers of cobbled inclines, testing the patience of bitumen, creating a village of soft boot soles. Now the sun hits this tissue-plugged sink, a hand dryer to a sweat patch. It edges the blur, returns sharp borders, and back on the hook, the newspaper man's room key. On the mount, the old man had matched up the animals, disassembled his cowshed. As the sun falls too quickly, he catches the last of it, peaked shadows dancing below a sheet metal pyre. I thought I'd read a Haibun now, which is a form of poetry that I write in quite often. It's a form that is a mixture of haiku and haiku-like prose. And this particular one is one of 2 in the collection. It's called The Pint That Follows. The Pint That Follows. Story unloaded and beer sunk, he asks me, do you think I've done the right thing? Pause. Yes, I say, but not because it's what he wants to hear, because it's true. There really is no point in being unhappy. We sit for a few minutes in comfortable silence. There are difficult weeks ahead, I say, but you'll get through them. And then there'll be something else, something new, and you'll feel better. He smiles, half believing me. I cringe at how rehearsed my response sounds, as if I've lifted it from a film. Frothy dregs drained, a glass ready to be refilled. We'll be here again, having this pint. Maybe I'll be the one with the reddened eyes and sleep-starved skin. Maybe it'll be him. But no matter which one of us it is, the other will be here, buying the pints, lending his ears. Being in Dylan Thomas's living room, I didn't want to pass up an opportunity to read this next poem, which is inspired by a minor character from Under Milk Wood, who I actually played when I was about 10 years old in the Swansea Little Theatre's production of Under Milk Wood. The character is a boy called Third Boy, and then in brackets Dicky, and he's the boy that refuses to kiss another character, another child called Gwenny, and the other children in the village make fun of him, and he runs home to his mother. So I wrote this poem thinking about what Dicky would think of this memory as an adult, and it's named after him, Third Boy Dicky. It begins with a quote from Under Milk Wood, which is, "He'll never forget as he paddles blind home through the weeping end of the world." Each night, on the darkened stage behind my moon-burnt eyelids, I relive it. Standing wet on the cobbles in my patched-up pants as the shrill girls giggle and gaggle around me, asking for kisses or pennies to buy treats from Cockle Street sweet shop, and I refusing, and always refusing. Because my mother said I mustn't kiss girls, they torment and torture young boys like me, but really because Tad couldn't keep his grubby fingers from the jars of the wild hovel women who live upon the hills. And so, 'neath the wood, I refused to smack lips with the village bike, as she became known, and ran, wee, all the way home like a porking pig, squealing for his mother's pink teat. And you ask how it makes me feel. It makes me feel as bitter as citrus skin, as abandoned as bagged cats, but as awakened as I will ever be, understanding that the almighty omniscient could have written a different part for poor Dicky, but didn't. I thought I'd end this set with a longer piece called The Walk to Work. It's another Highburn, but a slightly longer one this time. And it's inspired by, funnily enough, my walk to work in the mornings. I go from in Bryn Mill and down Walter Road, down onto Mansell Street and Alexandra Road, and then to the train station, Swansea train station. It takes me about 40 minutes. This is the walk to work, and this also begins with a quote, but it's actually a piece of graffiti I see on a back lane in Uplands, which is, "I am constantly waiting for something to kick in." This is the walk to work. At the head of Bryn Mawr, an old man with a sandwich board waves at morning commuters. "Jesus loves you, my Yessie and carried tea." Though the air is heavy with the possibility of snow, white daffodils have begun to sprout in the flower beds of St. James's churchyard. Bus stop acquaintances discuss the price of petrol. Tight to the lamppost, a crowd of white stargazers, envelope still sealed. 20 minutes from opening, a barber sweeps the last of yesterday's hair from his floor. Breaching the nimbus stratus, sunlight bounces between his polished chrome, springing out of the shop's front door to blind the street's eyes and windows. Exhaust fumes rise from the line of traffic on Walter Road, mixing with the smell of coffee beans and microwaved bacon. 2 boys in hoods pass me, pushing cement mixers like prams. For some, the working day's countdown has already begun. Outside the English Language Centre, a circle of well-wrapped men speak in a more comfortable tongue. Cracking old tarmac on the tree-cleared boulevard, the memories of roots. Over Mansell Street, 3 bras hang in solidarity, supported by the raised wire that runs between Bunny's Health Club and the Women's Aid. Anti-climb fence panels surround the old Albert Hall's crumbling edges. The street is being spot cleaned, renovated in patches. In the centre of a freshly painted white wall, a black marker pen message: "Wendy, I still love you." Caught on my sleeve, a long, flickering strand of someone else's hair. Trigger-happy snoozers, running too late to break the fast at home, dive in and out of Tesco Extra, promising themselves that tomorrow morning will bring porridge, a slow cup of tea. 3 half-drunk lager bottles sit abandoned outside the magistrate's court, half full or half empty. Changing traffic lights at the crossroads force a switch to the pavement on the other side. Must keep moving forward. At Clifton Hill's foot, a runaway orange wrinkles in the winter sun. A shortcut takes the route past the Ragged School, founded 1847, rebuilt 1911. A free education for the children of the Victorian slums. Later a soup kitchen, a bomb shelter. Now, in these gentler times, Swansea's Centre for Psychic and Educational Healing. Amongst the notices blue tacked to its window, ingredients for a recipe from the Devati Street Food Bank, and a flyer advertising a coach trip to the jungle of Calais. Bolt without thunder. From a loose flagstone, a shot of old rainwater. From the train station pour the strap hangers, suited and booted for careers in indifference. They stream out of Ivy Place, down High Street, across Alexandra Road. Pavement maintenance creates a bottleneck outside the Grand Hotel, giving sleepy Swansea a taste of Waterloo and Victoria, Liverpool Street and King's Cross. As the minutes ticked towards 9 o'clock, the remaining crowd withdraws to buses, taxis, shops, cafes. As the station at the station's entrance, a busker strums beneath Pete Ham's blue plaque. The familiar lyrics rise into the air, making their way as far as the open window on Alexandra House's 4th floor. Clouds gather. An old man empties a bag of rock salt that looks like snow. Thank you.
And the next one, please.
Jeff, is it okay if I put my beer on there on top of that paper? Okay.
It's very valuable with paper.
Ah, yes.
It's my notes from my Charles Christmas in Wales thing I do. You might be wondering why there's a fireman's helmet in this room. It's all part of our fire prevention service. It's actually part of the props for Charles Christmas in Wales, which if you're familiar with the story, Mrs. Prothero burns the turkey while Dylan and his mate Jim are in the garden hunting for cats, which is why there are cats on the back of the chair. And they run into the house and throw their snowballs into the smoke before calling the fire brigade. And the fire brigade come and put the fire out.
I am going to need my glasses. They're becoming more and more an addition to my show.
Yeah.
First of all, I don't need glasses to do that. Thank you very much for being here. I can't tell you how much it means to me to read here. And Jeff and I have been going back and forth with our emails and Facebook messages to kind of bring me to this point in the tour. And also to have had the nights sleeping here, just amazing. It's just been a true time that I know when I'm back home, there'll just be such an explosion of memories, and so many of them will be able to stick with me for the rest of my days. And hopefully those days will continue to allow me to write poetry and give readings like this as well. So I appreciate you setting time in your busy lives for poetry, not so much for me, but for that great art form. What I'm doing on my tour is I was influenced by Thomas at a very young an age because of the Caedmon recordings. And I was turned on to those by another older poet. And simply he said, look, if you want to hear the poets read their own work, we can order these records in from New York. And I was living in Calgary at the time. I was in my early 20s. And I said, I've always wanted to hear Dylan Thomas read. I've heard so much about his readings. So the particular album that he brought me in, he talked a lot in the beginning of that particular reading about simply reading poems that I like. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. It sounds like it's going to be something that I wouldn't mind adopting. So I've been doing it now for, well over 30 years. I like to open my readings and honor other poets. Because without their trampings and their, great hardships, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at on the path that I've created. So that's my way of honoring my elders, so to speak. So I always pay tribute to Dylan that way. What I'm doing is also, the poems that I like to read are by poets that I've gotten to know in my life, and in one way or the other became friends or had great debates about poetry, shared drinks, things like that. The first one that I'll read is a poet that's really gone on to be probably one of our more famous and well-known poets in Canada, Purdy. And he has this beautiful short poem that I've always admired. And I got to know him and his wife, so I'm pretty sure the woman that he's referring to in the poem is his wife, Yurth. So it's simply titled Poem. You are ill, and so I lead you away and put you to bed in the dark room. You lie breathing softly, and I hold your hand, feeling the fingertips relax as sleep comes. You will not sleep more than a few hours, and the illness is less serious than my anger or cruelty. And the dark bedroom is like a foretaste of other darknesses to come later, which all of us must endure alone. But here I am, permitted to be with you. After a while, in sleep, your fingers clutch tightly, and I know that whatever may be happening, the fear coiled in dreams, or the bright trespass of pain, there is nothing at all I can do except hold your hand and not go away. Beautiful little poem, isn't it? Beautiful, beautiful poem. I've always loved that poem. So that's a poem by Purdy. So what I'm also trying to do is I have tributes that I've written over the years for these poets. And they appeared in a book that came out in 2001 called These Are My Elders. I was raised on a farm, so the whole concept of an elder was pretty much pounded into us at an early age. And those were people that you listened to and you didn't sass. So I always applied that term to the poets that I admired too, the elders. So this is a poem for Purdy that I wrote. And I got to know after a while that he actually read it and kind of liked it, which doesn't usually happen. You know? I'll just say this, is I did a workshop with him, and I had a lot of questions. So I was constantly thrusting up my arm like this, and he would address me, "Yes, you over there," with a question bursting from every orifice. So I thought, what a marvelous title for a poem. I'm going to snag that one. So this is Bursting from Every Orifice for Purdy. So, was the reach for the Beaufort worth it? All the miles, all the stories, putting your name beside your friend, thanks to Stan Rogers, who reached for it first, reaching far into you to remain alive forever on the cover of yet another book. And this giving is what the years give, the years of words and intentions, the decision to define a country. You were not young, the land gone by, as the provinces took up a trust, began to seek the voice in the poems, sounding for them like the towns and cities where you still appear, read, ask for Canada. And what of the young who follow, choose words on which to step toward you, you on that rock by the coast, the sea staring as no lake would dare, the sad lake beside your real home. These young are aging and asking too. Their country wants to be old, defined. They are saying so now between their covers. There have been women on many shores, women left in the poems, but just one remains as the tide, always somewhere in deep, moving, as the mystery for one man, watching. There have, perhaps you'd smile, been students, waiting at some small school, clutching a selection of sweaty poems they hope and fear you have read, waiting with a stupid question bursting from every orifice. cheers to you all.
Cheers.
So that's my tribute for Al. Now, there's another Canadian poet too. If you ever get a chance to do a little research or homework, he's well worth it. His name is Raymond. Well, in some parts of Canada, it's Substr, so the OU is that ow sound. And then in other parts of Canada, it's Substr. So I'm of the Substr part of Canada. So this is, he wrote a lot about the streets and characters on the streets. And like Rhys, he had a long walk to work. He worked in a bank for many, many years. So it was, his route would have been right downtown Toronto. So there's a lot of different characters that he met along the way. And this is kind of captured, definitely captured one of them. So this is Raymond Substr. Waiting the call. He's waiting outside the Bell telephone building for a long-distance call, perhaps from New Zealand, perhaps from the Maritimes, or from the Prime Minister, inviting him to play in his latest cabinet shuffle as minister without portfolio, responsible for keeping count of the ministers with portfolios, or perhaps from the colonel of his wartime regiment, urging him to take a hand in dispersing the separatists holed up in a church in a town called St. Eustache. Or even from the Secretary of the United Nations, offering him the job of basketball referee in a game to be played between North and South Vietnam. Or perhaps he's not waiting for any long-distance call, or any call at all. Who knows, he may even be willing to settle for a single kind word, one moment of compassion, one mouthful of hope. In the meantime, he's drained a bottle of top-grade $1 wine and curled up on the steps of Mr. Bell's building. And not all the telephones from North Bay to Windsor, ringing all at once, will be able to waken him in another minute. Now this is my tribute for Raymond. I at one time visited Toronto, and I wanted to see if I could visit him, but his wife was dying of cancer at the time. So she was not well, and they weren't entertaining too many ghosts. Where'd that come from? Too many people, or friends, or family for that matter, I was told. And also, he didn't want me to come over, and it was almost that it was more the reason of him needing to rake his leaves than the fact that his wife wasn't feeling well. He was quite adamant about that. I have to get these leaves raked. So anyways, and he was an older man at the time, approaching 90. This is entitled Be Safe. So this also has to do with a phone call. First as thin shadows, then silence, the end of spring joins our conversation. In the halls of Ryerson, I ask about a visit. You reply, saying no, in the sound of no students. We go on, speaking of Toronto, the one city I thought to ask, how is Raymond? And the poems. Sun and dust cover the gray tiles. In the halls of Ryerson, you talk about raking leaves. I see the gathering of an old year. You in this city freeing new grass. Our voices exchanged a shift in volume. Ralph Gustafson is dead. You speak of illness, a wife not well, the days when poetry was a cure. Back in 43 with the wartime RCAF, back with Susie at the amusement park, back with the $35 hand-operated Mimeo. You speak of the presses heard in these halls. There is what the doctors have said, what they say when age is the virus. I hear your boredom of this story before the subject is changed to poets. Acorn, well, the last time you two spoke, he like so often drove the phone down, and Leighton seems he's forgotten to call, but Louis, good old Dudick, still writes. What you pass on has become weight, unsettling, heavy, like the pen in my pocket, the silence in these lengthening halls. We have made the most of a coin. Thank you. I'll just read one more before I'll end my set here. And I'm moving into just individual poems from my latest book called Selected and New Poems. It's 30 years of writing brought together miraculously between two covers. It was a very difficult project and took me nearly 2 years to kind of come to grips with it. But nonetheless, you're not often asked to collect your work or select your work. So what I did is I made it simple for myself, and I thought, well, what poems would I like to read from now until the time that I'm unable to read my poems? So once I had that, the selection kind of fell in place quite quickly. So I was rather pleased, because I was starting to wonder if I was ever able to kind of, come to grips with having that amount of work somehow brought down into the amount of pages here. So this is a poem that I was kind of thinking of Dylan in a way tonight, and that's kind of why I wanted to read this, because I have been lucky enough to remember my boyhood, and lucky enough to be able to kind of capture a lot of it in poetry. So I'll share a little bit in this poem, and then we can have a break and a drink. And that's probably fitting in this house too, wouldn't it be? Perhaps. I had a wonderful Uncle Merle, and this is about something he did for us when school was out and summer was about to start. So this is called Elm River. The payloader deepens the swimming hole. School is officially out. A tired fur crosses the current, blown into a bridge. We remember the storm together. No one tells of how they hid. On that tree in a patch of sun, we are the boys the trout watch. Foreheads to be reddened, bodies the depths will explore. The busy sun wants our bones. In the marrow it is ready. No other season loves the blood. Without knowing, we bear ourselves. In and out of morning shadows, the first dive has us standing, feet stuck in the bark scum, a shivering row of dares. In the air, our hands part. Coldness enters us at the surface. Reflections like gates open to the ocean's pull. In ears, our minds beat. In the heart, feelings are pure. In this endless breath, we have no idea, no worry, girls will swim between us, could ever block out the sun as we lift ourselves toward.
That was very enjoyable.
Some of them are, and some of them,
Really
some of
enjoyable.
chances as well. In that context.
Oh, so you're the unofficial
I
bride.
worry him by saying,
I've known Jeff about 50 years. And my husband, my
there we are.
husband died now. He
Okay.
Jeff played tennis for years and all that. So yes,
Okay,
so I do this.
round
return.
2.
Okay. T-shirt clothes.
Ding.
First one, yeah.
Yeah, why not?
Quiet in the cheap seat.
Oh, sorry.
You see, why do I come? I don't get paid, I get insulted.
Yeah, you must like it.
No, I've got a few jobs that need doing. Like light bulbs.
So like I said in the first half, this book has recently been published, and I tend to start readings with the very
Can
first
I also
poem.
say that the books are for sale in the...
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, haven't got used to that bit yet. But,
and you're not allowed to leave unless you go at least one book of each author.
I like the sound of that.
So the first poem in the collection is a poem called N dash. And just quickly, an N dash is a punctuation mark. And one of its common uses is to depict a span of time. So for example, the span of time between a person's date of birth and their date of death. So this is called N dash. We begin. Our souls as thin as silver skin onions, caught breathless in the danger that follows the fourth digit. Then, loaded by that first gulp of air, we sink our hook into its side, scramble up, join others in squinting. Years pass. We learn to forget that the N dash will ever end. We dance hard, test the strength of its span, lose track of time. We are all so alive, so far from falling. You say you have found a lump. The appointment is next Tuesday. It will be okay, you say. You're sure that it's nothing. It's another one of my Swansea poems. It's written about the Havard Morva copperworks, which is probably the last copperworks that stand in. It's in ruins, but in the first half of the 19th century, Swansea was copper smelter, not just to Britain but to the world. And I think we're now beginning to acknowledge that history, and they've done a lot of great work down near the River Tower to preserve the copperworks and make sure that people can go there and learn something about them from information boards, and also there's a couple of speaker boxes which you crank and listen to contemporary accounts from people who lived in Havard and Landor in the 18th and 19th century. This poem is called Bonaparte Before the Sphinx. This hard winter mud commits shoe prints. Faint notches on a footpath not yet ready for school trips. There are statues here now, the smelters remembered. Tip of my nose warmed by underbite breath, I pause. Their tales of all reforged by speaker box voices. Words rise above smokestacks, fertilize scorched ground. Don't you remember when this town was important, when salted barks carved copper loads beyond the bounded Severn Sea? Upstream, we have ripped up the monkey puzzle's roots, swept the dust of industry into Weatherspoon's picture frames, built a concrete river using leftover slag. Here, backhoes are working the old bones like larder beetles. This copperworks carcass, picked clean, ready to mount. Though summer will bring crowds, ice cream chimes, unfolding tinfoil, for now there's just a lone figure, fresh tarmac, the heavy silence of monoliths. This next poem is a poem in 3 parts, and it begins with a quote from a book called Writing Poems by Peter Sansom. And that quote is, "Why we have so many gulls in poetry these days is a matter for reflection." This is called Gull. 1. On a wrinkled edge of rooftop cliff, you might catch a lull, see a flash of beauty in my withdrawal, find comfort in shared silence. But lose me to the frenzy of flapping wings, and our link is severed. I'm just like the others. See the ripple of long dead monsters in my gait, and in my eyes the slow attend of monsters still to come. 2. August is the kindest month. Discarded chipped paper falls from ungrateful hands, mixing vinegar and ice cream, stirring wings, a glutton's screech. Replenish this dinner plate. Cover these streets in what you cannot eat. Keep us sweet with cold sausage rolls, crumbs from crisp packets. An empty belly is a sharpened beak, a talon scrape across tender hands. 3. At low tide, see the squabble die. Dusk brings with it an uneasy peace. The well-oiled shock of this machine reduced now to watching, waiting. Yes, predators come to take our young. The search for higher ground breeds tension, but above the mew and choke we rise as one. It is not impossible to see us soar. A poem now that I think most people can relate to. I wanted to write about, there's a drawer in most people's houses where you end up shoving everything that you can't bear to throw away or don't immediately need. I think a lot of people call it a junk drawer, but there are a few other names for it. I wanted to write a poem about looking through someone else's junk drawer and sifting through and seeing the things that they felt were too useful or memorable to simply throw away. This is called Excavation. Browned elastic bands, close to snapping, grip the inscriptions on used tickets, expired coupons, a faded proof of buried treasure. Artifacts unstacked, your palms become soup spoons, blunt pencils, spent batteries, a locked lock without a key. Then the dislodge of a stamped passport, a love note written in unbroken hand. This quiet box a portal now, an unsettling of prehistory. See how the world turned without your weight, and how it circles still. To make hollow by removing the inner part can leave more than just a hole to fill. New shirt. She gave me a shirt, one of yours, though never worn. An unnecessary Christmas present, still boxed, sleeves safety pinned to the collar. So I unbox, unpin, put it on and, for the briefest of moments, think of you, even though you never wore it, and never will. This poem is called Drowned. I dreamt that you were drowned, your clothed body caught in the reeds of a silent river, so far upstream that the canopy hung thick as cobwebs. Breaking my own rule, I wake and tell how they left you there, a pale white warning of currents too fast, not bloated by water, but thin, sleeping, preserved, though maybe turtles have begun to snap beneath the surface. You say I'm the last to visit, a day's trek through the scrub to sit with your ghost. we skirt the aerotine, make offal of tongue, until eventually you sliver the hush. It was her dress, you say, enveloping, unstringing, her and her dress, coiling around us like rope, dragging us under. This poem is written in a form called a Guzzle, which is a form originated in the 6th century in Arabic verse. But this is a loose westernized version, so I've called it Guzzle. And a Guzzle is composed of 5 or more couplets that are thematically and emotionally autonomous. So just a bit of background there. This is Guzzle. Outside the front door of a mid-terrace house, wedding photos spill from a split black bag. In summer, we enjoy a barbecue on the beach, but the sausages dropped on the sand go uneaten. The next day, despite the hours between us, my fingers still cling to your faint perfume. Although I find her number in a charity shop shirt, I do not phone to see if she was unwanted too. Despite what Hollywood would have you think, nobody makes love in slow motion. Morning. A dried slug curled up on the carpet, brought through the house with last night's bins. To feel the sting of aftershave on his freshly cut jaw, the felled soldier would kill many, many times more. For my last poem, a thank you to Jeff and for inviting me to read to you. It's such a pleasure to read in Dylan Thomas's Birthplace. This is my last poem. It's a poem that I don't tend to read in the second half of the year because it's called A New Year. But I think we're getting to that moment in the year now when the nights are drawing in and we can feel the new year coming, so I thought I'd end with it now. This is a new year. The years are storm-straddled. Crag black hooves thundering between headlands, kicking up hailstones, washing sandbagged towns to the sea. But this afternoon, jaws clamp open, and all surface water reflects a fresh blue page. So go outside, and with the winter sun on your neck, a crisp shock of air in your lungs, tune out the echo of hoofbeats, the sound of the storm about turning. A new year stretches out as empty as mirrors, though no doubt still heavy with the weight of a first bite. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Rhys. Thank you for joining me. And I wish you much success with your path as it goes onwards and your exploration with words.
Thank you.
And your first book, I definitely need a copy to take it home.
Of course, yeah.
What I do is I have a manufacturing job and I have 4 coffee breaks. So to stay sane, I use these breaks to read poetry and so I'll look forward to that wonderful collection.
Thank you.
It's very nice for me because I'm a little further down the path than Rhys. So it's always nice to be joined by a younger poet and feel that fire and the energy and the passion and most of all, the success of what he's done on the page. So my hat is off. So I'm going to read primarily some poems of my own now. And again, they're poems that I just simply like to read. I don't get a chance to read them often, but for instance, this next one, it's been a long time. But you have to come back to them. And when you do, fortunately, they're generous and kind enough to let you back in, because you don't always remember how to read them. This is, it's called March of the Cedars, and it was simply inspired by a hedge. It happens to us poets, you know. It doesn't take much to become the reason to write something. March of the Cedars. Around the settling house, the fragrant march disappears. Uncut grass shades the ant. This is no regiment, preparation to defend. This is a family, roots entwined, sharing water and ray. Young and the browning, the hedge performs the planted duties, to fence in, out, befriend the fly, or stand at attention as the sun inspects the evening. Other taller trees talk of summer traffic, the odd lone bird, tourists on bikes who stop to take the moment and listen. Nearby, stumps sit gray and wise, recall the feeling of place and purpose when the wind sang a leaf to sleep and the saw hung rusting in a web. I've written a lot about children, and it's kind of ironic because I have a situation where I don't see a lot of the children that I've written about, and now I have grandchildren, and I don't get to see them much either. But nonetheless, I'm always fascinated by how the children can kind of creep into your life and cause moments of beauty. This is called In the Sky a Streetlight Plays the Moon. Thunder passes over. The children huddle under their blankets, safe until the next roll. I invite them to my desk. We cuddle, go out of the fear into a word on the reason the clouds are angry, running away from home. Each giant crack, it is the boy who cries. As for the girls, oldest and youngest, they have each other, hold hands, talk of bikes not put away, the shed door left open, beetles there. The thought of bedtime passes, brushing teeth far off in the bathroom, a long story with the lamp on. We all hear the wind. In the sky a streetlight plays the moon. And down the hall a book drops. A little hand falls asleep. Here's another one I haven't read for a while. This one here. It's strange when you send your poems out like to contests and the judges are required to write some kind of commentary, which doesn't happen a lot. But the odd thing about this poem is, and I still kind of chuckle about it, some of the commentary was this notion that this was Blakean, this poem. So see what you think. I wrote it a long time ago. And I take on the personality of a very young girl, and you'll find out her age. And I'm trying in the poem to perhaps sound like her. This is called The Cloud's Song. I am brighter than my sister, brighter like the sun. My sister is older, but I am brighter. That is what I know, the brightness. Not being smarter or sweeter or anything better or above my sister in any way, but simply brighter. I shine. The light cheers out of my eyes, leads my smile to find other faces, stands up and stretches out of my heart to warm the big people all around me. I am almost 4, the baby of a family, here with my dad in the tub reading on a day he calls Saturday and stays home to be with me. I miss my sister, who is older. She is not bright, she is darker. Eyes brown like a crayon, her smile with a hole in it, and her heart sits like the snowman I wish we could make today. But the cloud song is coming down, each drop a note on the window, a silly song I can't sing, but my sister knows it. She's older. That is what I don't know, the darkness. And I'll read a few more here. Yeah, I wrote a book called Masstown. I have copies out there, and it's more or less trying to preserve history. And I applaud Rhys for what he's doing in his poetry, because I think it's very important that as poets we're doing this in a world that's changing so quickly, and so much wants to be knocked down and eliminated and replaced, and maybe even the removal of history. I worry about it, I really do. So I feel obligated, and have for a very long time, to, when it comes time to preserve history, I need to do it. So I did some of that with my family's dairy farm, which is there no longer. I mean, in my opinion, once you take down the barn and you take down the farmhouse, what's the land? If there's no cattle being milked, the land is just there, really doing nothing. So I've written a number of poems to capture what my grandparents did there. And the one poem that I always like to read is, my grandfather would go through these phases. There was a thing at one time, a disease that they called hardening of the arteries. And I think it's gone on now to be more or less kind of described as Alzheimer's. But my grandfather would go through these periods of being out of it and needing great care from my grandmother. And then when she left, because the women on the farms all got together and went to town once a week and did their thing in town, and the men stayed home, my grandfather wasn't working on the farm any longer. But then he'd have these great lucid moments when I sat with him. And this kind of captures some of what was going on with him at that time. It's called After the Women Left. One day every week, the women went to town, at different times for appointments with grocers, doctors, hairstylists, or to study the Bible and pray in a living room being lit by a late summer sun, quietly drying the wash they left on their lines. A late summer sun they comment on in stores, pleased to be away from the demands of men. During the few hours Bert knew the house was his, to fill a pipe, to seem well. Required nothing other than a clarity he claimed in front of the grandson, left unable to question moments easily described as miracles. Simply an afternoon when a disease seemed to rest. Not to rely on his wife for a box of matches, one match she usually lit to start the pipe. An afternoon when his mind came back, and a memory of a trip to a family in Coquitlam became the story he shared with wide smiles. Appearing between puffs, he exhaled. He blew in the direction of a pitcher used to divide the ongoing past from a time he stood by a window waiting for his wife to drive in, to allow him to be in need again, arteries hardening. The return of a wife late in the day ends silence, her goodbyes coming in the kitchen window, after wheels grew loud on dry carport stones. Her hellos filled the hallway into where he resumed a kind of partnership with dying, went away from being who she wished to ask, out to their swing, cool and still in a maple's shadow. Thank you. I'm not used to a lot of applause between poems. I'm used to this. That's what they do a lot in Canada, so I appreciate your clapping. I really do.
Yeah, but we're used to poets who go, there.
Oh. Yeah, well, there's no point. You must know how to read your poems. You must. If Dylan taught us anything, I'll tell you. I'm going to close with just a couple more poems from the last part of the book, which is the new poems. And it's about my cat Simona, who I'm missing terribly.
Oh.
And when I get home, I'll tell you, she'll be giving me the cold shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
She doesn't like these trips and tours.
Yeah.
Here's one of the poems in that the book. It's from the book Simona, which I'm trying to find a press to take on. Anyways, we had just moved into our house, and we thought, well, let's get a pet. And we thought, let's not get a dog, let's get a cat. So, because we knew our routines would be able to handle a cat. But I was told that I needed a new chair, a chair for my desk and what I was going to set up where I was going to write. And someone told me, well, they just threw out a whole bunch of office chairs downtown in a dumpster behind this building. So I thought, oh, okay, well, I better go and have a look. So when I got down there, the chairs were virtually unscathed. There was no rips in them. All the undercarriage worked, the wheels and everything worked on them. So I picked this one, and I wanted to write a poem because it's become quite significant between Simona and I. We both seem to still fit in it. It's been odd because when we got her, she was very thin. She was only 9 months old, and I was thinner. And so she would come in beside me, and it's one of these old chairs that's got the full arm, like that. You see them today, they just do like a circle or something, and it's empty between. So it's a wonderful place for her to snuggle. But over the years, I've had to keep moving over to the left. So now the chair's like this, and I sit in the chair like this, and somehow she's able to kind of get in there still and be comfortable. So anyways, this is called the Human's Chair. And I dedicated this to our SPCA. You must have a similar thing here where you can rescue pets. Yeah. What ends up with a history of travels seems to include not only vehicles and explorers, but a chair. Ugly and used, once in an office, only to be given up and given away, plucked from a dumpster to comfort dutifully yet another strange rear end. How the human made the choice came down to the one with casters and obviously the color, a worn green, the color that means so much to them, connected to their attempts to save their properties and perhaps the planet. What ends up being the important act seems to include leaving the chair, decide to bring home a different comfort. She whose name is Simona. also given up and given away. A different choice finally found in a room of open cages, with a look in her yellow eyes saying only one thing: please choose me. All I want is to sit close, stay warm in the chair I know you have at home. Yeah, sadly, it wasn't long before we had her home we found out that she had been treated very cruelly. And that's kind of what started me writing this particular book. I think what I'll do is I'll close with this poem. You know Gertrude Stein, and the way that she wrote her poems quite often would have been influenced. She used to wake up early in the morning and listen to different sounds, and a lot of the sounds involved the different carriages going by and the rhythms the wheels created from going over the cobblestones. She was quite bizarre that way. She would sit and listen to like creaks in the home and put these rhythms together to, I don't know if you ever sat and read any of her poetry. Some people consider it madness, but it was based on these rhythms that she would hear. So I wanted to try something like that, and this is the result of that. It's called The Lapping. Sunday is the day when silence prefers the morning, like it knows the cats of the neighborhood are up, have been fed, seem keen on a visit to their water bowls. Silence also knows a certain cat. She is like a bashful musician. Her pink tongue, a tiny drumstick, comes down upon the water, breaking the moment. The human is stopped as she drinks. She has taken from his reliable hand. The water bowl is for her and silence a daily stage, a stage some have seen, performances on the day of rest. Do we actually have a day like that anymore? Try to be, try to hear, when such unlikely music is the only loudness. Thank you very much.
I don't know if anybody's got any questions for our two poets. Grill them about anything.
I love questions, so have lots. What happened to my beer? Oh yeah.
Okay, well we'll start off. How did you become a poet? Or how did you start writing?
I was hanging out. I have a couple of things I usually share about that. My father and I never got along. My father was a brutal workaholic and would always buy property that required lots of work because there'd be no grass, nothing done in the yards, no garden built. And so we were not able to communicate to each other. In fact, I probably hated him. You know, and what happened is that he started putting notes on a magnet on a fridge. So I'd come home from school and these notes would be there, and it would always be more work, more jobs that I'd have to do on top of what I was already supposed to do. So what happened is I started writing notes back to him. And quite quickly realized that words could be very powerful without the mouth. And so that's kind of how some of it started, because I realized that's the type of power that I want. And I knew I could have it even just with a pen and a piece of paper. But I've been very careful over the years to make sure that I don't stray too far into foul language or anything that I feel is unnecessary. I have no swear words in any of my poems, and I've been conscious about that, and I feel strongly about it. But the other thing that also helped me learn how to write is that I had a whole bunch of friends that wanted to be rock stars, and none of them could write lyrics. They all wanted to be on the keys, the guitars, the drums, but none of them wanted to write or could write the lyrics. So I started tinkering with stuff like that and realized, another aspect of words is that you can really communicate with these things. You can really get inside people's bodies and their minds and their souls. And so that's kind of what started me.
Is there any particular poet that you based yourself on, or one that you admired so strongly that you wrote in a similar vein?
I think at one point we all have, or we all do, because it teaches us how to find our own style. That's what happened to me. I mean, when I was very young, come on in.
Oh, yeah.
When I was very young, I wrote very much in a traditional form, 4-line stanzas, all the lines rhyming, trying different types of forms and things like that. And then ultimately that kind of wore off. I get just tired of that style and felt that I could do better. I could reach inside myself a little deeper and a little more challenging. So then I went kind of in the other way and went really into like a free verse or, kind of doing crazy things with forms on the page. So, slanting down the stanzas this way and that way and breaking the lines all up and doing weird kind of drop downs with things like that. Then that all wore off. And because I wanted to have, especially now, like I just finished writing a manuscript called The Black Rum Poems. And what I did in that is I was watching society. At first I was very angry that this generation could communicate to each other with letters, right? LOL, IMA, whatever, right? They have distilled the language down to a point I don't think it's ever been to. I mean, Cummings did what he did, but I think that we've really distilled it down. And I was very angry about that for a long time. I said, how dare you do that to language? But now, having written the Black Rum Poems, it took me to a point back to where, how did I learn how to read? How was I taught how to read? And I remember the little sentences. See John run. Watch Spot jump. Hear Jane sing. And I thought, those were pretty profound sentences. They taught me how to read. So I wanted to take the language of these new poems down to that. I thought, by the God, if this generation now can talk to each other with letters, surely what I can do is write an innocent, clear, plain little sentence and leave it alone in the poem and let that poem stand and see what this generation will do with it. And also, I know the age that I'm writing in. Reading's dropped off. The book has been challenged for a while. I see it making a new comeback. And, things like that. And also the other thing is that to escape the doldrums of my pursuit of money, I used rum in a way that was a ticket out of it. I would purposely sit down and get a little buzz going, a little glow going, 2 or 3 rums, and that was my vehicle out of the mundane. And that was very deliberate. And it was great because it did take me out, and it took me to probably poems I would have never written as plainly and simple, because I thought what I want most is if my book was sitting anywhere and anyone picked it up and cracked it open, damn it, they're going to get it. They're not going to close it and go, there it is again. There's that goddamn poetry I can't understand. So that was some of the pursuit too.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Do you have a day job?
yeah. Yeah, I always have. Yeah, I'm in Canada they call us blue collar or working class. I work in a manufacturing plant. I work a 12-hour day. I work day and night shift. And retirement can't come quick enough. I'm going to be 60 in February, so it's I'm starting to see it coming over the hill, right? So I'm pretty happy about that because, you know, I just have seen so many men in my time, they'll retire and they don't have a lot they're doing with their lives after that. And I really want to kick it in, you know. I've started writing in a far more political vein again, which I'm really happy about because, you know, I mean, we've all loved Wordsworth, but look what happened to him. You know, he become very, in my opinion, quite apathetic. And I don't want that to happen to me. I want to be addressing stuff that's going on in my time, however I can and whenever I can. So I've really jumped back into that because in Canada, we have a situation, it's a similar situation I'm finding out all in the UK too. And I simply put it as people being driven out of their own countries for whatever reasons, and they're coming to Canada and they believe that they can have a life there. They believe that they can raise their children safely there. They believe that their children, you know, will be able to live a life too there. So because this is happening, I'm searching myself with these poems. I want to know how I really feel and really think about this because I have a lot of people around me who don't like it. So I call it a small matter of inclusion. I've always been fascinated with the word inclusion. So it's challenging so far. You know, you got to be honest. Try to be. Because I mean, ultimately, you're gonna read it aloud at some point, so you don't know who's gonna be in the room and how they're gonna feel, right? But I know you guys are going through the same thing, very similar.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So I've been trying to pay attention to all this Brexit stuff, and you know, so. But somehow the old planet just keeps skipping on. I don't know how. We're pretty fortunate.
Despite it.
Thankfully, at least then there's more. There keeps being more topics and things to write about. So.
Can I ask you something? You said you was quite specific that you wouldn't use swear words. Does that speak like a sort of more a deeper philosophy of language to that, or is that a sensibility?
I just feel they're unnecessary. Like I don't need the word fuck in any of my poems. And I see it all the time, right? And when they read it, it gets a goddamn reaction, right? Like I just think, well, surely we're more elevated than that or more evolved. So I'm just not interested. I mean, I grew up with it.
So you think of them as base words rather than?
I think they're unnecessary. I don't need them in my poetry, and I won't have them. I think if I need to make some kind of a splash or emphasis, I better know how to write something far more effective than words like that.
Do you think it's a sort of there's a socio-linguistic point there as well that the use of swear words reflects certain communities as well. If you wanted to, for example, write a poem depicting a social community that did use that vocabulary.
What I kind of grew up through, and we were talking about this a little bit, was the whole slam poetry thing, performance poetry, spoken word, if you will, right? And where I was